Peace, and welcome to another episode of Elevate the Mic. And I'm your host, Max Mupese. Today, I'm with a guest who wears many different hats. She's an entrepreneur, a creative spirit, a freedom fighter, and she's also the truth. Let us all welcome Roen Higgins. How you feeling?
I'm good, thank you.
Amazing.
That's an intro, man.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you. Hey, you just got to create from what you know, you know what I mean? So speaking of which, I don't want to, go too fast throughout the interview. I just want to know how you feeling, man. Like how's everything on your end so far?
I'm feeling good. I'm in this space where it's a year of a lot of different trajectories, but just seeing the season I'm in and embracing that, seeing what's next. But as long as it's about mental health, my focus is really on young people, advocating for emerging adults, helping them figure out their next move. So a lot of things on identity, compassionate care, well-being. Yeah.
Got it. Which is important. I like that you mentioned that because what happens is that sometimes we watch this interview and we don't know why is this person sitting next to me or what you're about. So I want to make sure the people who are watching this for the first time know that you have a lot of experience working with the youth. And with Elevate the Mic, our purpose is to elevate the mindset and skill sets of individuals who are part of the hip-hop community, which is something that you wear a great hat and you could show and demonstrate how to move in a certain way. And at the end of the day, for anybody who's watching this, it depends on their decision. You're not going to necessarily force them the way to go, force them how to move or where to go, but with your insight, it's going to help them move a certain way. So before diving deep into your story, if I'm not mistaken, you grew up in NDG or grew up in Montreal?
So I grew up in Snowden area.
Got it.
So the bridge, that border between Uptown and DG.
then,
So I've had the best of both worlds. And so yeah, that's where I grew up.
Got
Montreal mostly, and lived in LaSalle, and yeah.
Got it. And sometimes like that border is like in between. People don't necessarily know if it's Uptown or DG. They just say Snowden,
Yeah, exactly, Snowden. And then I was in a lot of the parts of NDG for many years.
Okay.
So yeah, my heart was definitely in those areas of NDG life.
Got it. Amazing. And could you tell us about some of your bittersweet moments growing up in that area or growing up in different areas throughout the city of Montreal?
Yeah, so how I describe it is I was definitely couch surfing, you know what I mean? Just in the beginning living with my aunts, who came to Canada like many of the Caribbean women in the late 60s, the domestic schema. So, we're those latchkey kids generation, come home with bus pass on your neck. And, things were pretty tough with my mother being diagnosed with schizophrenia years ago. So living with my aunts, but then sooner or later social services come in. We're just home. I'm in foster care, but then I'm home to home. And so, I was that kid with a smile, definitely mass depressive, not even knowing, hyperactive, but always just brushing everything off, but seeing the best. So the bittersweet moment, I would say, was the power of imagination and creativity. I was writing poetry, drawing, sketching, working with kiln, the clay, pottery, whatever, And those are the things that was, that and gospel music was what really just saved my sanity. I was definitely resilient, but that's what kept this future, the possibilities, opening doors, was that. No matter where I didn't live, I knew I was good.
Got it.
Because if you can create something, I can create different possibilities. The power of imagination was a portal of a new world, you know what I mean?
Power of imagination, which is important because that helps you travel in time. Like it helps you travel in a certain way where like not necessarily escape from reality or escape from the present, but it helps you manifest certain things about your life. And you're like, you know what? I got to tap into certain things I have to tap into certain parts of my imagination that's going to help me evolve in a certain way. So kudos to you for that. That's good. When it comes down to hip hop, because it plays a major role in our lives, right? Would you say hip hop chose you or you chose hip hop?
So I'd say, to be honest, definitely growing up as a 90s kid, if you will. The culture, the influence, the gear, the mannerisms, the movement, the diction, you know what I'm saying? Definitely as an influence, but for me who grew up in so many different areas of the city, I'm only mentioning the two, right? But I was in different cultures, I was immersed in different things. So the same thing with genres of music. I'm that person's like, I don't want to ever feel like I did that day one day, and singing Spice Girls the next. So the different genres of music, down to even neo soul, that has impressed me, hip hop, R&B, but gospel was my just that moment of knowing that I'm made in the image of the creator. I'm meant to create. We're not meant to be followers. We're meant to be trendsetters. You know what I'm saying? So like those things, I take a piece of everything, but I believe my purpose is, the blueprint is there for me, and I just got to seek it. So these things are just different, what do you call it? Posts, signposts in my life. And yeah, hip hop is definitely one of them, where of being truthful, authentic to who you are, knowing your story, knowing someone else's story, and living that legacy and just breaking barriers. So that's just one of the movements, you know what I'm saying, that's touched my life, I would say.
Got it. And who were some of your earlier inspirations?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's hard to pin one, but you know, when I always just seeing back in days like MC Light, just the hardcoreness of a Raw Digger, of course Busta, like just how, because I was a fast speaker when I was a kid. When I was 16, I spoke like this. So when I saw a rapper speaking like this, I'm like, whoa, other people like me exist. And you know, just that the culture mix of, let's say, him being Jamaican but American. I call myself a jerk poutine, you know what I mean? Born and raised in Quebec, but I come from a yacht, you know what I mean? So we bring that spice, but you know, it can be a little, you know, a little cheesy, a little hot fries, you know what I'm saying? But a whole lot of gravy. So like just, I believe for me that's what hip hop is the amalgamation of cultures as well. Even though we know the origins and me, my family coming from Jamaica, but always trying to understand, but you never fully comprehend because it's always evolving.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's the soul. You can never keep up with it. So I'd say it's the evolution of watching from the roots of reggae turn into this hip hop of the streets of you know what I'm saying? Like, and the dance, the culture. It's definitely something I admire, and it's always had me in a trance, impacted my life in that way.
Okay, you said something important. It's an evolution. It's not something that you can pinpoint and say it is like it constantly.
And that's why when you
evolves.
asked me, like for example, at one point, it was Lauryn Hill for like just this person who refused to be boxed in. You know, I remember Pink saying something when the labels were like, "Yo, we need you to be this," and she was like, "I will never niche down. I want to be who I want to be when I wake up." And for an artist to say that was just so like, yes, because that's how I feel. You can't box me in, you know. And I felt like people like Lauren was like that. You want to sing doo-wop one day and sing hip hop next day, sing R&B another, soul, why not?
Shout outs to Pink. I used to really like Pink, and then I realized she had that mindset. Like she knew what was up in the industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, shout outs to her.
She was like, "You ain't boxing me in," and I was like, "Yes," you know. And that's why a lot of artists felt like, you know, they felt hindered because they weren't letting them be. They're like, "No, you're gonna be this. You're gonna be this face. You're gonna dress this way." And I believe as an artist, it's just to be free, creatively free, as you're navigating and getting moving, you know, with the flow.
Facts. Got it. So as the saying goes, which came first, the chicken or the egg? It's always debatable. We know the answer at the end of the day. But I want to use that saying with your career. Would you say that education came before creative expression, or creative expression came before education?
So, interesting question. I like to call myself the creative evangelist. When I started to navigate, even though I've been in education as an educator, working with special needs children, and seeing how, just to know how every kid is different, every child is an individual, and you have to know their learning style, but you also have to know your teaching style. You have to be creative. You have to be on the run. So this kid's on the spectrum, but he's on the low end, and you have to do something else, and this kid's like, it's behavior all day, and he needs to be calmed down. I have to be creative at all times to know how to meet that kid's need in the moment and de-escalate the issue, right? Somebody has a weapon. I have to be able to, like, I don't get to roll like certain police do.
Right.
I got to be able to calm you down, hear you, see you, right? Creative literacy is key. And I believe this needs to be in our education system.
Creative
because
literacy.
once you are creative, you have the power of the most important skill, which is decision. What am I going to do right now? At the drop of a hat, at the drop of a pivot, right? So for me, it's definitely passion. Passion to me, imagination and passion is creativity. I believe when young people, first, I'm saying young people, I think we're all inoculated as children. You give them Lego blocks, mega blocks. They're building. And then you, at a certain age, you're like, okay, you're going to learn this and you're going to spit this out. I believe we take that away. We need to let kids and then even adults, because we lose that too. It's like, oh, I used to play the violin, but then I got my career. We have kids.
Right.
We back burner the most important thing. When you go in the kitchen, you're like, I'm missing this. Okay, put that ingredient. That's creativity. Everything else comes after that. Education, the templates, that's later.
That's important. Like, imagine, it goes back to what you said, imagination. Not losing sight of that imagination, not losing the importance of the imagination. How important was it for you to stick to your imagination throughout your path, like throughout your ups and downs, throughout, the decisions you've made in life?
Saving grace, man. The power of imagination makes the future possible. The power of imagination makes me feel like, hey, okay, that door is closed. This key doesn't fit in the lock. All right. Oh, there's a screwdriver, right? It's that pivot. Like, I got to see that something's possible. I got to believe that I can make a hole in that door, or I'm going to make something that's going to, a suit that's making me walk through. Like, people are like, okay, that's impossible. You can't walk through the door. Watch me. But because I believe in that in my imagination, I'm going to follow through and do whatever it takes. Reach out to whoever I have to reach out. And that's where creativity is bridge resource, being resourceful. You know what I mean? So I would definitely say the power of imagination is that tool, that key, that power that you bring into a space. And I think that even doing spoken word poetry when I just started, it was on the fly. I remember the first competition, they ripped pages of some old dictionaries, choose a word, you have 20 minutes, perform for $200.
Okay.
Oh man, I hated that thing at first. But then after, that's improv.
Right.
It's like acting, being on stage. I'm like, okay, now you're a cloud and you're floating. You're a piece of smoke coming from a cigarette, and you're like, what? That's crazy. But your imagination, you just create something new, something different, never the same. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Okay, so you were challenged. That's the way you started, really?
I would say the way I started, again, it goes back to culture growing up. Just, down to dissing competitions, having the last word, being on the stoop, us freestyling. Everybody rapped in the nights. We all thought we were rappers, right? We all thought we were singers. We all created constantly. And I see the difference of working with kids now doing poetry workshops. Our day, we all wrote poetry. We all did creative writing. We all painted. I can't explain it. It's just because we didn't have screens taking away our attention other than the, what do you call it? The idiot box of TV. Right. But we played outside, we created, we spoke, we had different kind of communication. And I think just on the fly, we just learned to do improv. So at first I was intimidated, but for money,
hey,
the motivation was there. But then I loved it. I loved it right away. So yeah.
Got it. Can you tell us the difference between poetry and slam?
Yes, thank you for that question. I've gone to a lot of spaces and places where people are like, you're a slam poet, or we're having a slam tonight, and some of us are reading, doing different styles of poetry. Slam, as I know it, is the competition of poetry.
Okay.
Right? Slam is, okay, you have the judges, you have 3 minutes or 30 seconds to do this, and to me it's like being in a boxing ring.
Okay.
Right? And yeah, people, I see it more I hear it more in the French community where they say, I'm a slameuse, I'm a slam. I do slam, but I'm a poet. I do spoken word poetry, dub poetry, right? That's a little mix of, and there's history behind this, right? So, and yeah, I love slam. I haven't done it in a minute, but slam poetry is definitely powerful to see.
Which one you prefer doing the most out of everything?
Spoken word.
Okay, and why is that?
You are the storyteller. At the same time, you could be a comedian. I can read off the dome. It's whatever is clever. And I mean, all poetry, you could speak about whatever topics on your heart. But I feel being a spoken word artist, you're painting with words. You know what I mean? And people could argue that's in all the other things. But slam poetry is definitely the competition. So I love it. But yeah, you better, your heart's racing and you're like pacing in the back. I'm like, okay, I don't remember my words, But I do love it again because sometimes the slam poetry competitions have a theme. And they're like love. And I'm like, love is like a kamikaze mission, and it's like, boom. And it's like, okay, white flag, do this, do that. And it's fun.
Got it.
Yeah.
Just playing of words.
Playing of words, yeah. But I feel that all creativity is that. Seeing something and creating something out of nothing. Again, going back to those who believe in creation, right? Out of nothing. You're like, okay, elevate the mic. I'm like, all right, bless. And I'm just like, okay, what can I do with that? Okay, the mic is this, and put on an angle, and it's my imagination first.
Right. Man, while I'm talking to you, I could sense my imagination just going through it and neurons working. I could feel it. I love it.
Yeah.
Blu Riva. Tell us the inspiration behind that name.
Okay, so it was one of those shows. How I got into the whole scene of spoken word poetry.
Yes.
I wanted to win a Chaos CD. Heaven only knows.
Oh, wow.
First person to run up stage gets it. And Mama Zita, I don't know if you know Zita, she was hosting this thing at McGill. And I just wanted a CD. She's like, you have to sing. I worked with kids for many years. Vocal cords were shot. I was like, absolutely not. She goes, you have to do something. So I started freestyling. Couldn't rap a gift in a moment, but I was freestyling. And I was doing my thing. And in that moment, I just came up with a piece about mental health. It was the first time I actually expressed it. And I was no longer the comedian, the person that's always laughing. In the moment I got serious just to win this free CD.
Caught people off guard. Like,
yeah,
what?
caught people off guard, caught myself off guard. But anyways, thank you for my CD. And then people, 3-4 people were like, hey, promoters were like, hey, I want to sign you for the show. And somebody dubbed me as, I don't know if his name was Golden Sun. Everybody was like, we had another one called Black River or some Black Ocean. Shout out, Judy. But for me, it was like, I always rocked blue. And it was my flow. And that's how I got Blu Riva.
Got it. So through all of those experiences, like it's like a piece of puzzle, right? Like you just gotta take this piece, add it with this one, and then it creates you create your identity, your brand.
Yeah.
That's good.
And it was only after I realized that I'm always running and I'm always moving, but the symbolism of the river, I was like, man, it's years later I realized it's like continuous flow over obstacles. You need to go around on top, you know what I mean? But even that can start polishing the rocks that are in your ways. The thing that we see as an obstacle, as an issue, can be the very thing that helps your flow. Helps
Okay,
your movement,
got it. And tell us, like, if you were to give an advice to anybody who started journaling rather, and doesn't know how to express themselves, or like how to go about doing poetry, what are some practical steps they would have to take in order to start?
So I would say I do encourage people to write, but I also encourage, because just working with kids and even the adult mind that's very quick, some people have a hard time writing. It becomes intimidating. They worry about spelling and handwriting, or I'm not good at this. So I tell people, even before you touch a pencil, you could even audio record on your phone, but you can just think about an object, think about a color. So if I say flower, what do you think about a flower? I tell them to add an adjective, add a verb, just give me texture, light, numbers, the who, what, when, whatever it is, and just start to describe. And people create amazing poems. I work with kids from kindergarten, and some of their stuff I'm like, what? You know, like, I'm a dandelion, I'm a weed in the ground, I'm ravaging, and I'm like, whoa.
Shoot.
But because I said choose an object, they say flower. What's the color? Yellow. So give me another color. Gold. Shine, a luminous. And then they're giving me, I'm like, give me extra words, make it rich. I want to feel it, smell it, touch it, believe it. And they're creating poetry. If you want to write it, that's cool. If you want to record it, if you just want to spit it, that's cool.
Right.
But I just be in the moment, because if I'm telling you a story, yo, you know what happened yesterday? It's dry. I'm like, yo, you know what happened, bro? Yo, it's crazy. This woman, she came up to me in her skin. You're describing, you're making it rich for me. But then people who have to write, they become intimidated.
Right.
Lady on bus. You know what I mean? But I tell them to just say it how they would say it to a friend, where they're like, yo, you're not going to believe this. You're giving me layers, right? Your 5 senses. That's how you create.
That's powerful. I mean, shoot. Imagination.
Imagination.
That's the word of the day. Like, just thinking about not taking our imagination for granted whatsoever.
That's it.
You know, that's good. So, poetry and community vibe.
Poetry.
Yeah, both of them. Could you tell us about that community and how you got involved?
Yeah. So first was Community Vibe Collective. We're talking about way back in the time, over 2 decades ago. So they used to have these spots, these cafe vibes, and would be playing improv, like the musicians, any musicians that would show up for the night, and then poets, singers, and it was just a collective of creatives, I think 20 something deep. And over the years, some, it evolved, and just vibes, just improv. Sometimes you had a theme, or sometimes you would start, you're spitting bars, let's say another guy is playing the violin, and then I just might start doing poetry, but I might end up singing, because it's like doing beats together, but we're just creating on the spot live.
Got it.
And poetry, that is a Christian movement started by Sven Telemak and 2 other people. And that was a movement that was powerful, and we just did tours doing that, and it became L'Arsala after. But yeah, there's other movements, and you know, Coca Cafe was the first though. Coca Cafe, Ontario Street. Shout out to Kenny Stanislaus and Inobi. And it was just a powerful movement as well. It's just bringing artists on stage, and some people would travel from out of town, mostly Toronto. And same thing, themes, bring your game.
What I get from it is like the years of experience, the years of dedication. It just takes a lot of grind. It takes a lot of trial and error. And you've been doing this for how long? What, over 20 years, you said?
Yes, definitely.
And you also recently took a leap of faith, which is like quit your 9-to-5 of over 20 years of experience working at that 9-to-5. What went through your mind before taking that leap of faith, and what did you learn about yourself after making that decision?
Well, first thing I'd say before, during, and after is I saw the road saying, that door saying, let's go. And I'm like, yeah, but it's locked, right? Because I was used to the benefits. I was used to being unionized. I'm used to the 9-to-5, working in schools for 22 years. And I'm like, how do I do this? And I didn't leave it. It left me, because when I was on disability, I was trying to write and they weren't getting back. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to take that leap as a creative. Like, that's crazy. I was told by my guidance counselor, you know, now in high school, there's no money as an artist in Quebec.
Right.
You know, so I was going to be a nurse like every other person in our community, like in my family as well.
Yeah.
And then I did that, and I'm like, man, let me work with kids. But at the same time, I loved it, the helping field. I was very passionate, but I saw the lack. They removed arts out of the school. Sports was minimized. These are the two outlets that young people have in finding their identity, understanding how their body works, understanding what their expression, right? So for me, taking the leap was seeing the signs to pause and do what I believe was put inside of me. And still working with kids, still in group homes, still in school, still in community. But I'm getting to counsel and do what I do through creative workshops. I don't have to just, you know, say, you got to watch this kid for the rest of the day. And I'm seeing like, man, this kid's stuck. But I don't have a say. Now I have a say. So yeah, I may not know when that next paycheck's going to come, but the passion overrides it every day. Like, this is what I'm doing. So yeah, it's take the pauses, and self-care. As a creative, the most important thing I'll say is, even though I was working in a space helping people, young people thrive, we were backburnered. And as a creative, I realized the same thing. We're in the zone, we're creating, I don't know, the camera, everybody in this room, like, hey, when's the last time you ate, drank water, went to the bathroom? And sometimes I was like, nah, this ain't it. I need to create a safe haven, a space that we can create, but be healthy and thrive. And not burn out doing it, right?
That's it.
Not, you know, that whole adage of creatives sleeping in their car and burning out and hustle, grind.
Yeah.
Nah, man. So like that pause, and that's where nature came in. Look at the reflection of nature in itself. It's always evolving.
Flowing.
There's a let go, there's a release of the fall leaves, but there's spring. There's a cycle, and we need to follow that cycle of our bodies as well, and our mind, and understand we're not meant to be who we were. So in my 20s, yeah, I was grinding, didn't sleep for 2 days, go to a show, go to a studio, you know, hit some bars on the mic, and then I ended up in an MRI machine.
Shoot.
Couldn't feel the right side of my face, left foot, and that's when I was like, nah, take care of you. Stop eating late 3 a.m, Picasso's, you know. You know, it was like, it's all fun and games, hanging out and chilling, but at what cost? So part of creativity is knowing when to sow the seed and knowing when that ground is no longer fertile. It's like, okay, time to shift.
Dropping gems. You're dropping a lot of gems. I like that. At what cost? That's the question we got to ask ourselves. Like, we're doing what we're doing. We appreciate and we love what we're doing. However, at what cost? There's always a price to pay, but the mental health and taking care of ourselves comes first before anything. So
yeah, for the paper, for the art, for family, for whoever. But yeah, make sure that it makes sense on the journey that you're on and where you want to be.
That's it. You also organize school tours, if I'm not mistaken. You still do that, right?
So yes, I only organize the Black History Tour.
Okay.
I should be doing more, but the demand is already there. So I've helped others in the past when I was working in the schools get tours for music in the schools and different things like that. But for myself, it's usually the demand, the need. So principals will be like, hey, this is what's happening with our kids. Our students need this. So then the tour naturally happens.
Right.
But for Black History Month, just that people can know my topics, I'll put it out there. But I should be, because, for example, bullying right now is still one of the top subjects that schools want, and I usually don't touch it.
Okay. Why
But
is
then
that?
I just feel that it's not my story. I know
Okay.
I have the knowledge and the giftings, but there are people who, hey, I was bullied or I was a bully, and I feel like that's their space. But when schools are like, no, we want you, I pull that identity piece in. Because you know who you are and who you're confident who you are. And if you have an outlet, it's not gonna be somebody's face. You know what I'm saying? If we're tapping, and I feel like there's things before we could speak about anti-racism and anti-bullying and all these topics, we need to work on our kids' mindset,
Yeah.
outlet,
Facts.
identity, because that's what makes a difference. So I just feel like it's all good to me to do a speaking engagement. I'm like, don't be a bully. There's a lot of work to be done, man, and it starts with how they think, learning to deal with automatic negative thoughts. We call them ants, A-N-T. We all have them.
True.
They look in the mirror like, I'm ugly. I hate this kid, or
Right. Yeah.
we got to deal with that first, right? So,
Gotta kill them ants.
yeah, you understand? Yes.
We don't want to kill
I'm gonna
ants.
I'm
but
gonna
I
take
mean-
that name for the workshop. Remember this. Kill the ants. Came from him. Love it.
And well, speaking of which, because you mentioned you only did that tour. However, what are some skills? No, sorry. What habits have you adopted that improved your character and skills once you did that tour?
I would say it started before, because when the pandemic happened, this is before I knew the real chaos that it would cause. I was like, man, I get to be home, because I was always overworking. I was a workaholic for sure, being in the community, being in schools, being in churches, on boards. And now the pandemic, there's this pause, and I get to pivot. I'm like, yeah, this is it. I had a feeling I wasn't going back to work, and I got to speak, and I got to be focused more on my craft as a creative. The thing that I learned that was necessary was, as a high performer, because I was also coaching, but I wasn't really living it, was like, go take them walks, move in between, stop being on screen 3 hours. I'm interviewing, I'm in CBC here, I'm doing this, and then I'm not eating properly. And I was like, nah. So I started learning no more than 3 Zooms a day. And then I was like, you know what? Even though the pandemic's over, keep up with these blocks. Make sure I have time to move in between, walk near the water. I lived in LaSalle at the time, near the rapids. And it was just being around other creatives, being in nature, eating right. That was a priority.
Setting
Going
boundaries.
to sleep on time, not going to bed 2, 3 in the morning. That was my pattern for years.
Shoot.
Running off 4 hours sleep. I was running off of adrenaline. My tank was empty. And I didn't know how to turn that off, but the pandemic gave me a time to, like, well, you're going to make a schedule here. you have to make your own 9 to 5. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a 4-day week. Best thing I ever did. I don't work on Fridays. Don't call me. I don't care. Maybe it's over 10 G's. We can talk. But like very rarely, unless that cause is really close to my heart. And, that was it for me. It's really setting the gauge of what works. And I'm not going to take more than, Black History Month it's a frenzy.
Yes.
I don't take more than 2 gigs a day. It has to flow. And if it does, it's not worth it.
That's it. We're not robots, like you mentioned.
Not robots.
Not robots.
I was a good iRobot back in the day, but I paid for that. So, yeah.
And because you also do workshops, right?
Yes.
So what are some common patterns that you've observed and you point out to your audience during those creative workshops?
Definitely mindset. Whether it's a child who, you've probably seen this, back in the days and working with kids, they'll be drawing. And, oh, it's ugly.
Right.
Crumple, crumple, crumple. Or they're coloring outside of a line. And then the educator says, oh, that's not how you color. It's this, telling you how to do your artistry from a young age. So they're like, yeah, I'm not good at that. People say, I'm not good at drawing. I only draw stickmen.
Right.
Or I only doodle. I used to say that. I'm like, doodling is one of the most amazing therapeutic things that I've done. It was only years later I realized, I'm like, man, that was my outlet. That was the only time I was calm, was when I was doodling. And you'll see people do that when they're on the phone or when they're thinking.
True.
It's like coiling the hair. So I get young people, even adults, to understand when you're fidgeting, when you're cracking the pen, when you're doing this with your hair, there's energy flowing. And you've been taught in school, stop fidgeting, sit down, sit up straight.
Right.
Let that kid doodle while they're listening to you. Because till this day, I'm 46. I need to do something to be able to listen to something more than 30 minutes. I'm like this. Okay, I need to move.
Right. we can't just
instead of
sit
just the
still
diagnosis, where's
right.
the outlet? We all need outlets. And as adults, that's why people internalize. We've learned to mask it. Your boss says leave it at the door. Your family says leave it at the door. Your school says leave it at the door.
Right.
Where's your outlet? Creativity is the first thing we knock off our list, because now you're an adult. It's time to get the briefcase and go to work.
Which is not normal for humans, just to sit 7 to 8 hours in the office in front of a computer and not move around like we're
Following through with somebody else's creative blueprint,
you know.
and you're not creating. You can do 7 hours of your own creativity because it's your passion. You can go, and that might mean like I forgot to eat, but
Right.
you're immersed in something that you created that was downloaded in your mind. But for somebody else's stuff, that's why you're like, man, what am I doing here, man? Right? But how many people lose their identity? We call it what the when people go postal, they're like, oh my God, he was the nicest person. Then he just came and did this to all of us. And because he's working 20 years doing something that now became his identity. There was no creativity in that. What saved my identity is because I was always creative on the spot. I was always creating my whole career. Yes, it was hard to leave 22 years. It was a part of what I did, but it wasn't, I'm going to lose my mind
Right.
because this is who I am. So when you teach young people, yes, adults too, but I'm going to start with always the kids,
Young.
to be creative, use the power of imagination, it's very rare you can get stuck in life. Because you're always growing and evolving. That's what creativity is. What's next?
Yeah, because I'm thinking like going that path, like doing it for somebody else, which is good when you start. However, for a long period of time, knowing that you have other passions or you have other care that you have other passions rather, sorry, that you really care about, and you tell yourself, man, I'm selling myself out for a paycheck. You know what I mean? So like it's
Literally.
important to really hone in and think about what you truly care about and what matters to you. So yeah,
That's it.
I'm loving this conversation. When it comes down to, I was gonna ask you if you ever thought about writing a book before asking you the next question. Have you? Is that something that you have in mind, or is that something that you plan on doing anytime soon?
For sure. For the love of words, flow. It's the acronym. It's already been in the making. And as a creative, and I'll be totally transparent, it's decades overdue, for sure. It's overdue. At 27, I thought that book was going to be out. I've helped other people author their books, help them create their books, cover everything. And with life, whether it's my poetry book or my story, sometimes I just get overwhelmed. So it's overdue, no excuses. And I've been in situations, where I've headlined shows and people are like, I'm looking for your table. I'm like, so if you're a creative out there, and yeah, I'm preaching to the choir, get it done. Don't wait, don't sit, don't look at perfection, because that was my mistake. I was always like, oh, I need to do this and I need to, but I already have it. It's just easy. The word's it's already done. I probably have several books sitting there waiting, but yeah.
Got it. And what's your biggest success story so far?
Biggest success story that I'm here. My biggest success story is being able to look at the same social worker and work with them who said, you're going to be having schizophrenia at 16. Or my family who said, you're going to be nobody, whatless like your damn father. All those kind of things that were said, and teachers who said I'd be dead at 16, in my face. And this the very first school I worked at was with those same teachers.
Right.
Or being told you want to be like, I want to be an artist, and being told that you can't monetize that in Quebec. And look, yes,
projecting.
and as I like to say to when I'm speaking to young people, is people want to hold up this crystal ball and try to put labels on you.
Yes.
Society with labels. I am a black woman, this, that, my sexuality is this. But we all, again, and I think back to Pink, people want to box you in. I'm not meant to be boxed, and I'm not who I was last year. We're ever evolving. You right? Whether I'm eating chicken yesterday and I'm vegetarian tomorrow, how does that change my soul, my purpose, my passion? So for me, my biggest success is to be alive in the land of the living, being able to do what I love, and be able to share that gift with others, to say, hey, you have a gift in you. Don't let nobody rob you by putting you in a box.
Yes, that's very powerful. When you hear elevate the mic, what comes to mind?
So one of my business hubs is called the Elevated Creative.
Okay.
So when I first saw the name, I was like, elevate the mic.
Where did it get that name?
Yeah, so everything I do is about, even my signature, my emails to whoever I'm working with, is I'm here to elevate. So when I hear elevate the mic, it's elevate your platform, elevate your story. Whatever you share, like I do believe words is power. As we hear in the Holy Book, it's like there's life and death, or death and life in the power of the tongue. And people are like, I'm stupid, I'm an idiot.
Right.
I'm never going to make it. I'm broke. I don't use those words. Even if there's no paper in my bank, I'm just like, it's not there yet.
Everything
Because
that
I
comes
see,
after
you put it out there. So it's the same thing. When I hear elevate the mic, I think of the power of your words needs to be known. Your story needs to be shared. Who you are and your identity. Let other people hear that, because it can elevate them.
That's good. Let's move on to the segment called If I Had the Chance To. So that's a segment where I ask our guests if they had the chance to sit in front of their 16-year-old self, what would be the first thing that would come to mind? So if you had the chance to sit in front of the 16-year-old Roen, what would you tell that person?
Never back down. Never let people's words be your mantra, or the labels. I always tell young people, it's like the labels belong in clothes and packaging.
Oh.
Or I say, where do you find labels? They'll say canned food. Exactly. Leave that on the shelf, right? Because I realized I also waited on people to do things. I didn't feel like I was good enough to like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start a podcast. Let's do it together.
Yes.
I always want to bring, sometimes you have to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't mean you're on your own. You could have mentors. Everyone needs somebody to make this work. But the vision, if it's you in the vision, in that my imagination was me to do certain things. Stop trying to pull everybody, because sometimes that becomes weight.
True.
So just execute.
Dead
just
weight.
make the moves,
Like, ugh.
right? Don't waste time talking about it.
Right.
Be about it.
That's it. Where do you see Roen in the next 5 years?
So definitely managing, it's always been a vision of mine to have a space where creatives can thrive and have conversations, not just about creativity, but about life. Because I realize that most creators are not, they're multifaceted. They're not just one-sided. And they have so many things, and they get overwhelmed with the different weights in their mind, the ideas, they can't sleep. And I admire, I'm in love with creatives. When I see, sometimes I'm just like, you're thinking about it, like, how do you know that? I'm like, I could see, just like, you just have all this energy. And some people flatline because somebody told them, you're just going to run the camera. But that person could be a script writer and don't even know it, right? I believe all people are creatives, but creatives who are already creatives who are losing it sometimes is because nobody taught them how to manage their day. So for young people first, and as they get older, especially us as adults, is to tap into your creativity. I want everyone to have that space. Look how coloring books became, adult coloring books were being sold more than coloring books for kids.
Right.
It became, right?
Right.
Because creativity was taking people like, oh, I'm doing a mandala. Wow, this is amazing.
Right.
Because we're not creating. We let our education system and the workforce rob us of that. But if you notice, the workforce that has the most healthiest people who don't take sick leaves as often and the least sick days, whether it's Google and all that, people have skateboards. There's creative spaces. They have post-its. They're learning to think different.
Vision boards.
Their think tank is all about the vision, and it's a healthier space because they get to create and use the power of imagination, no matter what your position or role is. It's not about a ranking.
Got it. Last question. Shoot, I'm having a lot of questions I wanted to ask, but like you basically summed it all, and it really comes down to imagination at the end of the day. Like really understanding the importance of our imagination, being part of a community that reinforces those beliefs as well. But I want to touch on what, like, if we had a chance to think about everything you're going through and everything you've been through, how do you want people to remember Roen?
So this answer will cover the best success story. What would I tell my 16-year-old self? What I want to do in 5 years. How I want people to remember me is that kid that was told that you're not going to be around for long, you're not going to be nothing, you won't graduate, you're too stupid, et cetera, is that in those very spaces, I was hired. Every one of those spaces I ended up being in, and not with arrogance. I walked in with humility because I didn't even have that expectation of myself. I was busy dreaming. There's a lot of things I'm still dreaming about, and I think I didn't follow through. So how I want to be remembered is that the legacy is not just on a vision board or in a notebook. It is executed. It's been delivered. I've followed through. And I think of every sport, without follow through, the ball does not go in the net.
Facts.
Without that ball doesn't go into the hole when you're playing golf. You have to follow through. And I think the generation, that's why I'm a Gen Xer, but when I see a lot of the late millennials and the Gen Zs, they make moves. They're like, I'm quitting my job. I'm like, I have the boomer in me, right?
Excuse
so I'm like,
me?
so yeah, what don't you want security? You need I'm wired. I was brought up by boomers. I'm like, you need to stay until you have something solid. Nah, go. If I can share that of anything that I want to leave in this world
Right.
is if you feel it and believe it and know it can be done. You see it, you can create it. So follow through and do it. That's a legacy.
Hey, thank you for those words. I
Yeah.
mean, shoot. How could people get in touch with you? How could the viewers learn about your social media pages? Feel free to share.
Yeah, for sure. So that is Roen Higgins on all platforms. I'm mostly my best reflexes on Instagram, but Facebook, I'm there as well. So yeah, you could definitely reach out. And again, anything with mental health, trauma-informed care, identity, creative literacy, and of course, service, reach out.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here, Rowan. And all I got to say is that you got a great and strong spirit that just inspires people. I could tell. It's beautiful to see in person. It's actually my first time seeing you, so
That's
I
true,
I just love the mission that you're fighting for, everything you're doing, and just keep on keeping on.
Thank you very much.
Love,
Pleasure.
love. There you have it, another episode of Elevate the Mic, where you elevate the mindset and skill sets of individuals who are part of the hip hop community. Peace.